Bukayo Saka! That is a goal! Wanyeri tries one!
Manchester United's main owner of football operations is busy slandering the players by name in public, and yet we still couldn't beat them. This is Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast, and we are coming to you after a pretty disappointing draw at Old Trafford, 1-1 against United, and there's going to be a lot to talk about from that, a few things to parse through, and there's also a few tidbits in the news, one involving INEOS and Sir Ratcliffe, as I just mentioned, is out here saying basically all the wrong things publicly. We'll get to that, and we might also touch on a few bits of pseudo-punditry that have come up in the last couple of days, but we're also going to do risers and fallers from the match. Yes, believe it or not, there are a couple risers that we are going to talk about. And we'll also cover maybe one or two performances or aspects of the performance that evade the risers and fallers conversation. But before we get all into that, let's do the admin. I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Blue Sky at shamsdale.bsky.social. And with me to go through all of this, first we have Drew. Drew, you can follow at Geechee Kid on Twitter and at Supply and Demand Drew on Blue Sky, or at Supply and Demand Drew.bsky.social. Again, those handles are so unwieldy. Anyway, Drew, how are you doing?
On the other side of 40, I guess I'm doing okay. Arsenal didn't give me the birthday present I would have wished for. But, I'm doing good. It's good to be back with you guys. Sorry I missed the last show, everybody, for those of you that did listen. But today should be a good one. I'm going to keep all my thoughts for that later.
Did you have a good birthday, at least, outside of Arsenal not delivering?
Yeah, I mean, it's always simple for me. Like, the older I get, the more simple I prefer things. Like, just, hung out, spent some time with family, had a dessert plate and wine, so I can't really complain.
I could go for a dessert plate and wine right now, honestly. That sounds like a lovely birthday.
I totally agree, yeah.
And then also we have John, who you can follow on Twitter at 305cast and on Blue Sky at yellowribbons.bsky.social. John, how are you doing, my friend?
Good. I'm down with the dessert plate, but I'm going to need something a little stronger than wine after that game, I'll tell you.
Are we talking like port, or are we talking like a full-blown cocktail?
Yes.
Maybe more than one.
Both. I got you. But yeah, it was a pretty disappointing game. Pretty, I don't want to say soul crushing, but I think if there was even, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if there was even like a sliver of a chance of us getting back into the title race, I think that is well and truly gone at this point.
No, it's done. It's done. This title's over. It's enough. No, we can stop talking about the title. We can start talking about like maybe doing something in Europe. Although it's a long shot, but it's a shot. That was one of the most disappointing and like kind of embarrassing United Arsenal draws that I've seen in a while. Even ones where we've lost but like played better. I mean, obviously it's better to draw than to lose, especially at Old Trafford, but still, like it was a real bad game from both teams, really, not just us. They sucked, we sucked. It just sucked.
Yeah, I think the first half, I mean, we were pretty good, and United were quite awful. And then just, we let them into the match. We gave Bruno Fernandes kind of, a free kick position that has been his bread and butter in recent years. Anthony Taylor obviously made it a little easier on top of that. And then just as soon as the game state was more preferable for United, they looked a little bit better and we kind of collapsed. Even after our equalizer, it felt like we just got way worse. Really, just really infuriating match all in all. Because I think, John, we were talking about this last week when, we mentioned that going to Old Trafford, it's those games are never about just us playing United. We always seem to be playing the occasion or playing the United badge, and I think that happened again today, unfortunately, or on Sunday, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's always something about this particular fixture that it doesn't really matter. Like I said, it's that on the last podcast. It's the one that I kind of look at when the season starts, and I'm kind of dreading. And I never enjoy Manchester United Arsenal. There was one that I actually enjoyed, and it was like back in like 2015 or 16, something like that, where Alexis Sanchez had that like flick in the near goal, and we scored like 3 in the first half. That was like the last one that I like really enjoyed right off the bat. But it's been a while. Obviously there's some good ones here and there, but this was definitely not one to remember. It was one to forget.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll go ahead and get into the risers and fallers from the match. So for those of you who aren't familiar, risers, we're each going to go around and pick one player that we thought had an impressive performance, maybe a player that has risen a bit in terms of just how we view them, how we rate them, and then fallers obviously is the opposite of that. Each of us are going to pick one player who disappointed us in some way or did something that maybe is cause for concern down the line. And of course, this doesn't have to be a player. I'm not going to pick a player for my faller, but it can be something conceptual or yada yada. We just try not to abuse that loophole too often. So with that, Drew, I'll go to you first. Who is your riser from the match?
For me, it's going to be Timber. I think there was so many questions surrounding him post-injury, how he was going to recover, and then obviously with Ben White going down early in the season, who for a lot of fans, both neutral and Arsenal alike, viewed him as arguably the best right back in the Premier League last season, and then with his importance with how he combines with Bukayo Saka down the right-hand side. A lot of fans weren't sure how the injury would affect us, but I would argue that Timber has probably been, especially throughout all the constant injuries we've suffered, probably one of our most consistent and best performers across the entire season. He's been immense. So for me, I think it would be a rise. It'll open up some interesting discussions, next season about if he's done enough to, kind of usurp White at that right back role. I don't know if he necessarily has, but what it does do at the very least, and what fans should be happy about, is that it gives you 2 excellent options at right back, depending on whoever is fully fit. If there's another injury issue, if you just want to rotate, you can mix and match. Timber obviously can also play on the left. So yeah, I think for me, once again, he was great against United. He's been great, over the last few months. So he'd probably be my chief riser, I'd have to say.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good one. Timber obviously had the assist to bring Arsenal, or to let Arsenal equalize. And I think he's been on a pretty good run of form, especially when you kind of go back to last week against PSV. Did a pretty good job defending down his side for the most part. I think there were, unfortunately, a couple breaks from United that kind of came down our right-hand side. But yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think largely he's been, excellent defensively, and he's started to contribute going forward. So yeah, I think that's a good one. John, any thoughts on Timber?
No, I think that's a good shout, and he just scored a great goal too. Not today, but the last match. So good shout.
Yeah. Who do you have for your riser?
I got to go with Declan Rice. I was thinking Raya, but I had to go with Declan Rice. He just in a game where it's so difficult to play there. We're not doing particularly well. We're not taking our chances. He just shows what a leader's supposed to do on the pitch, and he just takes control of things. And it's not just the goal, which, is another goal from him, and one that was a very well-taken goal, and one that was extremely important. Maybe not for the title race, but just for bragging rights to show that we didn't lose after being so dominant the first half. It was very important that we got something out of this match. Maybe not what we probably deserved, or you can argue that we probably deserved less, maybe, but we got points out of that game and was able to save face to some extent. So that was on him and his ability to just kind of do what needed to be done to get the ball in the back of the net, which is his kind of MO. That's, he's a leader, and that's what leaders do. And then it's not just that goal. I would say that tackle in the second half was just as good as a goal. Obviously still has something to do to finish it, but you're thinking he finishes that. And the way he celebrates it, he knows that's a goal. That's a goal that he just saved. That's and it needed to be perfect, and it absolutely was. And he's just such an amazing player. And I know that sometimes he could look ineffectual, but most of the time he's one of the best players on the pitch and consistently good. So I'd have to say Declan Rice. It's almost hard to say he's a riser just because he's pretty consistently he's consistently good, right? So, but sometimes he just reminds me, wow, what a player.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world. I think, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say anymore. I know there's some weird agendas out there about him because people want him to be Pirlo and Busquets and Rodri put together. But I think for what he does, he's just among the best in the world. And he's becoming, I think an elite two-way midfielder at this point. And you saw that in this game against United where, he was the one, like you said, who took that shot. I think he's probably the best ball striker in the team right now. Maybe someone like Winery has something to say about that, but I think Rice at this point in time is the best ball striker in the Arsenal men's first team.
At least with respect to ones that are healthy.
Yeah, with respect to the ones that are healthy.
Yeah.
But I just whipped that shot into the far corner to bring his level against United, and then on the other end, like you said, when Marino gave that ball away and Højlund was in on goal, I really just sat back on my couch and I was just like, yeah, that's 2-1. We lost. And all of a sudden, Rice just reached around and just, tipped the ball away from him in the penalty area. It was excellent. I mean, it was the perfect play. And, I think he celebrated that really well and he deserved to. Just an amazing player. Always shows up when we need him to. I think he's really solidified himself as a leader in the Arsenal team. And, I don't want to comment on other... let me rephrase. Don't let this be a comment on other players on the team, but I think Declan Rice is the on-pitch leader for the Arsenal first team right now. That's the guy who, when the chips are down, when our backs are against the wall, he's the one who demands the ball and tries to make something happen. I'm not saying other players don't. I'm just saying he's the one who typically, these days is contributing with a goal or with a last-ditch tackle or some sort of contribution to really change the game. But Drew, any thoughts on Declan Rice?
Oh, I think John and you as well covered most things, but I'm kind of interested to see how we build out the team. This is obviously probably a side conversation for another time, but how we build the team out in the summer, which we're going to talk about later, and how we view his contributions in the first 11. But overall, yeah, I would put him, down the same thing, down as one of the most 3 important players we have in the team, even when everybody is fit and healthy and we have no injury concerns. I think Declan Rice is that key to us both now and moving forward. So I don't know. You kind of can't say enough about him. I think it's interesting because for work today, usually we'll do some of these little viral on this day kind of pieces we do natively in house. And one of the ones I had to work on today was the 2-0 win against United back in 2019, where Granit Xhaka scored that long range effort from outside the box, and then Aubameyang had the penalty. So I had to work on that, and it reminded me of it's what Rice kind of did for us against United. It reminded me of kind of those small moments you would always have on a grander scale when we would play United historically in the Premier League, where you'd have moments like that across every single fixture multiple times a match. And I think it was kind of, when you kind of juxtapose it against how the rest of the match was, it was sorely lacking. So even those little moments through the goal line save, or rather the last ditch tackle save, then you also have his goal, the celebration, that kind of reminded me of those big moments that you have against a club who, yeah, they may be in 14th, 15th, but they still remain our biggest rival in Premier League history, right? I would put them down as that, beyond Spurs, obviously. And so that's probably why I got so frustrated about the discourse post the game about why he shouldn't be celebrating, which to me I think is absolutely nonsense. And I don't want to even dwell on that because I'm just going to go into some sort of rant. But for me, yeah, I think his overall performance kind of embodied what you want from your big players in big moments in your biggest rivals, rather against your biggest rivals, despite how their season is going. So, yeah, no, I think he's brilliant again, and up there with Timber for some of our most consistent displays across the whole season, and you kind of can't say enough about him. So yeah.
On the subject of of Rice celebrating the equalizer and how a lot of people took that, to our British listeners, I don't want to offend anyone. Actually, English. I think this is more of an English thing. I feel like English people are raised to hate fun, generally speaking. It's just there's always just kind of this movement to like hate on people for celebrating things, for like to like shut down moments of joy, especially in football. And I just don't understand that. And there's a lot of that. There was a lot of that coming out today, or sorry, again, on Sunday. People are saying, well, Arsenal are in a title race, and Declan Rice is celebrating an equalizer in the 70th minute. Yeah, man. And they were going to United did a substitution right after that, and then there was a fast break for those on the pitch who were observing Ramadan. So it wasn't like he was wasting time anyway. I just think it's such a weird thing to bring up and like turn into a talking point. So yeah, if anyone is doing that, to anyone who did decide to engage in that discourse, I just want to say you're a bit of a loser, and I'll leave it at that. John, you want to come in?
Well, I would say it depends on what shade of red your shirt is as to whether they criticize you for celebrating. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for my riser, I'm going to go with David Raya. And it was a bit of a tricky start for him, especially with the Bruno Fernandes thing. Actually, before I go forward, mainly on Raya's second half, what did you guys make of Raya's positioning for the Fernandes goal? Did you think he got that wrong? Or because I've heard a few different perspectives on this, and some people are convinced that he just shuffled too far to the right, and others are saying that he was doing that because the wall was in his way and he was trying to see the shot, so he had to move a little bit further to the right than normal just because of where the wall was positioned. But do you think do you think Raya got that one wrong, or is it just great free kick from Bruno and a little bit unlucky for Raya?
I mean, I think it was probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, probably. He was cheating very heavily to his right-hand side, but at the same time, given how big the wall was, he probably was expecting the wall to do its job had it have been correctly chalked off for 10 yards instead of 11.5. So you could probably argue maybe a bit of both. I'm not going to put the result down to the goal. I mean, it was an expertly taken free kick from Bruno, who historically has showed that he can come up with big moments like that. So it's just one of those things, and I don't want to make the result about refs not knowing how to walk off 10 yards for a dead ball situation. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily blame him per se. But maybe if the thing is, if he was 1 foot to his left, maybe he saves it. But I think the margins are so fine, you can't just like put it down to that. So I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't think it was great from him, but I don't want to kill him for it. Also, I think there is something to be said about just the guys on the wall maybe being a little bit more savvy. Like, if you should probably know if you're a little bit further back than you should be, and I would even posit that even if you're not further back, maybe inch forward a little bit. That's what 19 other teams do in the league. Just, don't take it lying down, I guess is the point I'm trying to make here. Just, push the envelope a little bit. I know we're Arsenal. I know we get punished for it a little bit more than most teams, but if you think you're an extra yard or two back, then in the future, I would hope to see players maybe challenging that a little bit more, inching forward, stuff like that. Anyway, not that big a deal. But I think in the second half, Raya kept this from being a loss. And honestly, maybe being a 2-3 goal loss, because the number of absolutely immaculate point-blank saves you had to make. I mean, there's one from Mazraoui, who came in kind of on his back post. And then there was Xerxes, who tried a little flick from, inside the 6-yard box, basically. And then at the very end, there was that Bruno Fernandes shot from within the penalty area that was just about to rifle into the goal. Raya stopped that and then, turned it into a double save to stop the oncoming rebound attempt. I thought he more than made up for any possible error that he made in the first half, and I saw he was great. Unfortunately, he didn't really have much to aim at in terms of his distribution, so there's not much I have to say about that. I mean, Marino lost the most duels on the pitch on Sunday. He lost 14 duels, so clearly going long to him didn't work as well as you wanted to. But yeah, I think all in all, Raya had a pretty excellent game, again, especially in the second period, and really kept us in it. And I think he's probably one of the leading candidates for player of the season so far. So well done to him, and thanks for saving our behinds. You guys have any thoughts on Raya?
He's amazing. I said I almost picked Raya as my riser just because, look, I get the arguments about his positioning and stuff. I do. And I think you can kind of come both ways on it. But, I mean, some of those saves, he just kept us in the game. And his distribution, his command of his area, it's just, I love watching him. And that's kind of a good litmus test. Not specifically that I personally love watching him and therefore he's good, but whether you enjoy watching a player as a subjective interpretation of if you think, are they good? You can look at the stats and everything like that, but is it a player that excites you? And it's kind of hard to get excited over a keeper oftentimes. And the ones that stand out are the ones that can really, get you going, and Raya's that for me. He's absolutely an electric keeper. He's a lot of fun to watch. I'm never worried about him with the ball at his feet, passing out, making good decisions generally. Everyone makes mistakes and things like that, but his command of his area, his ability to shot stop, and his distribution is just a world class. It's amazing. Yeah, excellent player. Drew, any thoughts you want to add on Raya before we move to the fallers?
Nah, no thoughts necessarily. I just kind of feel like, I guess maybe slightly building on what John said, he offers you that assuredness that while we all loved Aaron Ramsdale had us on the edge of our seats maybe one too many times up for our liking, but with Raya, apart from the very odd moment, that you're in for a good performance from him. 9.5 times out of 10. So, and that's such a key component when you're going to try to push for titles and European honors. So, again, like we've covered with Timber and Rice, you can't speak highly enough about him. And I would say he's probably one of the key factors as to why we came away with a point at all. So,
yeah. All right. Well, then we'll go into the fallers. So, John, I'll go to you first for your faller. Who do you got?
I think there's a handful, but on this one, this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Trossard probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird because I feel like he just has like hot and cold games. He's definitely not as prolific as he was. I know he's getting older. Obviously, that's relevant, I think. And there's a lot of games to play. And we do have some issues with distribution and getting the ball into creative feet quick enough, maybe reminiscent of like old issues that we've had. And we're a little bit contemplative. To be fair, though, we do face teams that like to sit a lot of players behind the ball. So that's part of it. But with Trossard, I feel like he'll have like an amazing game, and then he'll have a game like this where I thought he was pretty lackluster, which is a diplomatic way of saying what I thought he was this game. And I'm not exactly sure what the solution to that is. I don't know. It could just be a natural progression of events that players just will get hot and cold throughout a season. But it does cause me to worry, especially with his age, right? I don't think it's a big problem. I don't think so, but it's definitely something that showed this game. And when I say it, I mean his kind of inconsistency sometimes when he's an attacker. You know, we need goals coming from the front three. We need more contribution coming from the front three. And he can't just go missing like that.
Yeah. I will say, output-wise, he's about where you'd expect him to be. He's got 6 goals and 7 assists on the season.
How many games did he play?
How many games has he? I have to get on transfer marks for that.
Yeah, because I get, like, I'm not saying he doesn't produce, right? I think it's just the consistency. I'm not expecting magic from him, but we've seen how talented he is. He should, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like he should just be doing better than he is. He seems a more talented player than we see from him sometimes.
So he's at 41 appearances this season with about 2,550 minutes.
Okay, now those numbers that you just listed don't look that great in comparison to that.
No, they don't.
See, and this is what I'm saying. So, I'm not like, we pick a faller. It's not like I'm trying to throw him under the bus here, but it is something that's contributing to an overarching problem we have, scoring goals and creating chances. And when you have a player who's, obviously stepped in when Martinelli was injured, who was kind of our mainstay there. It was actually between both of them, and he was the main one for a while last season. It's a problem.
Yeah. The way I feel about Trossard is I think he was signed as kind of a bridge player to, kind of the next left wing talent that we were going to acquire, right? Because we went after him when Chelsea snapped up Mudryk, which, thank you for that, by the way, Chelsea. But we went after Trossard as a cheaper alternative. And, what I wish Arsenal had done was maybe use him for like 18 months or something, and then try to find the next player after that. I just feel like we've maybe held on to him a little too long with regard to what a big role he plays in the team. But I mean, I 100% agree with the selection of him as a faller, because I think, in this match he took 6 shots, 2 of them were blocked, 3 of them were off target, and I think all of those off target shots were pretty good opportunities. There were 2 right at the top of the box. There's one that he, early in the match, I think it was like the 30th, 31st minute, something like that. He curled it just wide. I think Marino might have gotten in the way there and put him off slightly. And then there was another shot he got. I think this was later in the match, kind of like in the 70s. He got the ball again, top of the key, and just scuffed the shot really badly to the left. And then the third shot that he put off target was when Tierney had come on, crossed it really well right behind the penalty spot, and Trossard just somehow managed to drag it to the right. And, I think this is also, again, later in the match. And then he had one that he put on target, but, it was a nice chip shot, or chip ball from Odegaard, put him one-on-one with Onana, and Trossard just couldn't get good contact on it. So those are all really good chances. You would expect him to put maybe one of those away. But he just seemed to get the wrong contact on it every single time. It was really disappointing inefficiency from him. And then on top of that, Trossard gave the ball away and kind of triggered the United break down our left-hand side. that basically required Trossard to bring down Garnacho, and then from that free kick, Bruno scored. So, he kind of in the way that Rice contributed on both sides of the pitch, I think Trossard kind of harmed us on both sides of the pitch as well. So I'm in total agreement with you, John, about that selection. Sorry, John.
I said nice. Yeah, I wish we didn't have any followers, but he definitely is one. And we just have a consistency problem on this team with a lot of players and players that are key for us, like at key moments, like. When you have injuries across the front three, you need your backup players to step up. That's the whole point of having a squad. You need them to be able to step in and do a job. And in some cases they can, some cases they can't, but it needs to be a little bit more consistent. We need more of a case of doing it, of actually coming through and putting in a performance and making sure that you're contributing to the team versus not. And with him, it's just the latter right now.
Yeah. No, agreed. Drew, any thoughts on Trossard's performance?
Well, he was my follower as well, so I guess I can kind of build on it. But you said his numbers were 6 and 7 in 41, correct? So 13 and 41.
Yeah, a little over 2,500 minutes.
I mean, yeah, that's 0.31 goal contributions per 90 or per appearance. That's like way under where you want to see someone who has basically been our first choice left winger for the majority of the season, given what injury to Martinelli. Yeah. And I guess for what it's worth, he's on pace for his overall direct goals contribution. So I guess just goals in general to have decreased 66% compared to last season. That's a sharp drop off. So I'm kind of with John about the fact that I could understand it if he was kind of in and out of the team, not getting consistent minutes. Sometimes it's hard to hit peak form when that happens, obviously, but when he's been consistently playing and he still has been this inconsistent, that to me is a worry. But I guess I'll kind of push back a little bit on what you said. I do think the club only planned for 18 months, and you saw that because we were going after left wingers in the summer. There's a reason why Arteta wanted to go get Nico Williams.
Yeah.
Just because it didn't happen, I do think Trossard was that kind of he'll be good for us for 2 years before he hits 30, and then we'll kind of have to review his contract at that point. I think that was always the plan. So I think he was going to always have kind of a squad role this season, and the fact that we didn't go out and get a left winger in the summer, I think, unfortunately, kind of put the pause button on that with a bunch of other things that we could always talk about. But yeah, you could probably argue he's probably reached his, he's already hit shelf life, and that was kind of on the downturn for us, and that's okay. He's had quite a long career as well. So you kind of would expect that maybe a lot of players when they hit 30, 31, they'll hit that rapid decline. And hilariously enough, we had the same conversation about Raheem Sterling not that long ago, where Sterling's sitting in that same wall, give or take. But for me, my issue with Trossard more than anything is the fact that there are so many instances where he's just very irresponsible in possession, and not just giving the ball away when he's on the ball, but so many times he'll panic a pass and just give it right to the opposition, and it leads to a chance or a half chance. And he does that regularly. He did it against United as well yesterday. And I think that for me is the bigger issue, because obviously we're a side that preaches role players, that preaches demanding the ball and being efficient in possession. Combinations on and off the ball, and the fact that so often he will go missing, even just during those passages of play. He's not always great tracking back as well. And I think one of the big things we missed about Martinelli when he was out was the fact that Martinelli will run his socks off. Even when he's not scoring goals, he will absolutely put in a monumental shift for you off the ball in transition tracking back. And Trossard just doesn't up to that same level as he is. So there's a few issues that you could say you have with him. And again, with John, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, obviously, but I do think he's not been nearly as productive or efficient or effective for us this season as he was last season. But also, I kind of feel like asking him to replicate last season was a big ask, because if you look at his numbers historically, he's always had one big year at a club, and then the rest of them have been roughly right around where he is now for us. So this is probably just about what you would expect from him. If you look at the scope of his entire career at club level to date, so it's hard to be mad at him for that. But maybe this is just what we have to deal with the rest of the season. But I would think it only would solidify our opinion that we need a winger in the summer. And again, we'll probably roughly touch on that later on. Maybe this episode if there's enough time. So
don't want to throw him under the bus. Jim Ratcliffe would be so disappointed with you for choosing that route.
What a segue!
Yeah.
I'll give my follow really quickly, and then sorry, Drew, did you want to give an extra follow, or do you want to?
No. Like we talked about pre-recording, Trossard was going to be my follower anyway, so John and I are traditionally on the same page as per.
Oh, did you? Is that I came in?
Yeah. No, it's okay. How dare you? Obviously, but obviously,
how dare I agree with you like we usually do?
Absolutely nonsense. Yeah.
I'll go with Arteta then as my follower, and I guess there is one other player that we can talk about as kind of like a bonus pseudo follower, because I think there's a conversation to be had about him anyway. So I think we're fine. But I am annoyed with Arteta because, yes, we are dealing with some pretty catastrophic injuries right now. Yes, United set up in a pretty annoying low block, and we don't like going to Old Trafford, and Anthony Taylor, gave United kind of a little leg up to take the lead and all that jazz. But we had the players to win this game. And I didn't really love how Arteta set up to begin with. I just, I know I just waxed lyrical about Declan Rice. I don't like playing him at left 8 against low blocks because I just think that position requires a different profile in that kind of game state, in that kind of situation. So I would have much preferred to have Rice play as the 6, and then and then we maybe have like a Zinchenko or a Lewis Skelly or even Trossard, and then we maybe get a little creative with who we play at left wing. I would have much rather done that than play Rice at the left 8 position. Also, when he just his substitutions were a little weird as well. When he dropped Marino into our midfield after he took off Partey, just our midfield structure just disintegrated, and United practically had their way with us in terms of storming down the pitch almost at will. I don't understand kind of the after we were able to do a PSV. I know that it's obviously a different match. PSV, by the way, I would call a faller today because, man, you guys must have been awful if we scored 7 goals against you in hindsight. But, after what we showed during the PSV match, I was kind of disappointed to see us revert back to, the horseshoe of death and Trossard and Nwaneri kind of being our best goal-scoring threats, but shoved out to the touchlines. And Marino wasn't really doing the false 9 thing like he had in Eindhoven. And I guess the last thing is I just don't get not subbing on Ben White to kind of provide that overlap for Odegaard, for Nwaneri to get central and close to the goal, and maybe, just challenge the back 5 a little bit more than we did. So all in all, excuse me, I just I didn't understand a lot of the decisions that Arteta made. And looking back, I'm just really disappointed with how he chose to set the team up and how he chose to make use of, certain players, and how he chose to keep others on the bench when maybe we could have used them. So, just a bit of a head scratcher from him. This isn't some massive referendum on whether or not I think he's fit to be the manager, but this game, I think he messed up a little bit.
I mean, I kind of feel like that's a fair assessment overall, but it's almost kind of indicative of one of those, I think you see it less of him now, but there's definitely points across Pep Guardiola's career where people would accuse him of galaxy braining it. And I kind of feel like maybe Arteta had a bit of that with this. Also, and for the record, I did say that PSV were absolutely awful defensively, so I didn't expect us to score 7 goals. But I do think it kind of showed that maybe they were a bit worse off than I had expected. But in terms of how Arteta kind of set us up, I just kind of feel like maybe given, despite their form, it's still your biggest league rival in my estimation, and maybe he was a bit apprehensive trying to go there against a United side that maybe you would assume on any given day they could actually be up for the fight, given, what's going on with that club. So maybe he was kind of apprehensive. Maybe he just wanted to take a point away, and that's obviously not what you want to see, given some of the quotes in the press conference saying like we would surrender the title over his dead body, and of course we then went and put in that performance at Old Trafford. So it kind of speaks against that. But yeah, it's hard to overly criticize Arteta right now. I kind of feel like, but at the same time, I do feel like he can't be exempt from it either. It's tricky because I probably would have rather wanted to see us go out and really push for a win, even if we lost, because I think for me, I think title race was over the minute Saka went out injured. I think that's it. When you lose your best player, you're not winning the title. I think it's that simple for me in footballing terms. So if that's the case, I think you play with the handbrake off a little bit against United. Go out, and that they're for the taking because this is the worst United team I've seen probably in the Premier League era in terms of results, performances, inconsistencies, questions around multiple, big name players, big money players. So even though we're not at full strength, I agree with you. I think we have the resources, or had the resources, given that it was yesterday, to go out and win. But I just don't think we were set up to actually go out and do that. And I think for me, that's probably the frustrating thing. So yeah, I'd agree with you that, Arteta does need to receive a few spitballs or two. So
yeah, and John McKenzie from Tifo Football had a really interesting thread earlier today, kind of talking about how Arsenal very rarely had more than one man in the block against United. So United would set up in a mid block and then a low block, and sometimes Odegaard would be in there, sometimes Marino would drop in, but there was rarely, if ever, more than like one guy in the block to pass to. We were always going outside of it, and I think that really contributed to kind of, I don't want to say the ease, but the success with which United defended against us. So I just found that really disappointing. But John, do you have any thoughts on Arteta's, on the way Arteta set up, or anything they might have done mistake wise through the match?
No, I think you guys summed it up pretty well. Look, he takes some blame when it's due. He needs to. Like Drew said, there's some galaxy branding going on. Obviously, I agree. He's kind of fighting with one hand behind his back, and we didn't lose, to his credit. But I don't know. It's eventually you gotta. It's kind of hard, right? With all the injuries, with Saka out and things like that. But these players should be playing better than they are. I mean, how many times did we pass to a red shirt? And that's normally fine when we're wearing red, but here we're not. And that's just a lack of focus. That's maybe a little bit of nerves and maybe even indicative of some kind of an issue with the game plan, and all that falls on the manager. He needs to make sure that they're up for this game, that they're prepared, their nerves are set, they know what they're going to do, and it's a game that we should be winning. Like Drew said, this is a team we need to come and attack and beat the crap out of them early on, and just like play them out of the game, off the pitch, the first half. And we were in control very good, and then we slipped up, so the focus wasn't there. And that's obviously Arteta's not wearing a shirt on the pitch and kicking the ball around, but he's preparing them all to do that, and thus needs to take some kind of responsibility.
Yep. Well, we'll move away from the fallers, and before we talk about this Ratcliffe INEOS nonsense, there is one subject that we did want to get to beforehand. This is kind of why I'm bent with the pseudo faller, and that's Martin Odegaard's performance, because I think he's come in for a lot of criticism. I think there has long been something of an agenda against him, and I think after this performance, I think there's a lot of truth telling when it comes to criticisms about him, and I think there's also maybe an amount of I don't say lying, but overindulgence in terms of trying to get the boot in. So I mean, Drew, I know you have a lot to say about this, so I'll kind of pass this over to you first. Do you think there is a conversation to be had about whether Odegaard is maybe not the player that we thought he was, or do you think maybe we're kind of watching people scapegoat him a little bit for how this season's gone?
I mean, I think people are scapegoating him, but also I feel like fans, and this is ironically something that you could tie into perception around Trossard is, I mean, Odegaard has never, I swear we've talked about this previously, but Odegaard's never been a goal-scoring midfielder. Yeah, the season he had with us when he had 15 in the league, that's a massive outlier for him.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I have personal concerns surrounding where his ball striking has gone this season, but I suspect that's down to the injury itself because it absolutely fell off a cliff this season in particular after his injury. So for me, I think the writing's on the wall of that a little bit. But just in general, I think if you look at the numbers, I think Odegaard is still, it's either top 6 in the Premier League or top 6 in Europe in terms of progressive passes into the penalty area, despite everything we've dealt with this season. So it frustrates me when fans can sit there and say he does things like he hides, he doesn't take on responsibility, he's a shameful captain, he's not doing it to try to be creative, he's not taking the game by the scruff of the neck. Listen, like, taking the game by the scruff of the neck is a term I cannot stand because it's such an outdated piece of rhetoric surrounding, like, early Premier League era, it's something Graham Souness would say that, on punditry or whatever. I can't stand it. Players will operate under the licenses that you give them, and I think even though fans know this consciously, subconsciously, they somehow forget that our players operate in a way that they're instructed to. This is, and so I think if a lot of players are getting flack that maybe they should, if they want to deflect it towards Arteta, that's fine, but fans know the system, and you can question if our system is the actual issue. Sure, that's up for another discussion because I'm one of those fans that does think that sometimes we are far too passive in possession. We lack a lot of incisiveness that we shouldn't be lacking given some of the players we have when we are fit. I think we're not chaotic enough. I think we're not direct enough a lot of the time for the sake of wanting control. That's another question, but despite all those limitations, Odegaard is still creating chances to the level that you would expect him to. Those numbers haven't demonstrably reduced despite everything that's going on right now. And because of that fact, it shows you that he's still actually doing what he's there for in the team. But when you lose your entire starting front three, what more do you expect of him? You're going to ask a 17-year-old to perform wildly above where he actually is, and now fans are putting those expectations on Ranieri very quickly. He's got a 6/8 playing as a 9, who's never done that across his entire professional career, and you have Raheem Sterling being Raheem Sterling in his current iteration, and you have Trossard also having a down year. It's at some point, I just want fans to kind of apply context for 10 to 15 seconds and see where it gets them. Because this is like the same kind of stuff that we would see in previous years when there was so much, vitriol on social media where it was every weekend it was attacking Granit Xhaka for whatever it may be, for the parting of his hair going the wrong direction or whatever it may have been. And it drives me nuts because I think there are certain things we can and should be frustrated about this season, and those things are valid, but we don't have to relitigate those. But when you look at everything that we have dealt with this season, and I swear I tweeted about it as well, maybe a couple hours ago, where I said, I saw a StatsMuse post that said, or someone's response to that Saka he still created the most big chances in Premier League up until last weekend. And when you're missing such another key creative component and a key contributor in direct goal scoring from Saka, when you take him out of the team, you take your best center forward out of the team, you take Martinelli out of the team, you had Odegaard who had he had an injury, you're missing Ben White, who's massive in our build-up. The way he understands with Saka on the right-hand side was huge for the way we play. when you factor in all those contextual pieces, I don't know what fans want from a player at that point. He's not Ronaldinho. He's not Lionel Messi. He's not Cristiano Ronaldo. He's not those types of players who can just make something out of nothing, and he never has been. And it grates me because this is the same guy who was voted as Fans Player of the Year for 2 consecutive seasons. And so obviously fans knew how good he was. They appreciated him, and all of a sudden the rhetoric is now flipped on its head because we're having a poor year by every conceivable otherworldly happenstance that's occurred since before the season even started in earnest. And I think for me, I'm at the point where I have zero patience left for it. And it's absolutely crazy to me that fans are back to turning on players so quickly, when I feel like more than ever, there's probably more context now to support players given everything we've dealt with and to turn on them as quickly as we used to see maybe 4 or 5 years ago or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I will admit in my article that I wrote on the game, I did list Odegaard as a faller. But I didn't list Odegaard as a faller because of anything he did creatively. I'm on FBref right now, right? And I'm looking at his scouting report, and this is from the last 365 days. Let me check and see if this is in the Premier League. Last 365 days in the men's Big 5 leagues. Expected assisted goals, he's in the 97th percentile. Non-penalty XG plus expected assists and goals, he's in the 97th percentile. Progressive carries, 98th percentile. Progressive passes, 98th percentile. There's another one that I was looking at here. Here we go. Assists, 95th percentile. Expected assists, 98th percentile. Key passes, 98th percentile. Passes into the penalty area, 99th percentile. Crosses into the penalty area, 89th percentile. Progressive passes, 98th percentile. Through balls, 99th percentile. And even with goals, he's at the 88th percentile. With just assists, generally, I'm not sure if I said this already, 95th percentile, right? So up against the rest of Europe, he still has some of the best output around. It's just that what I think has happened here is Odegaard now is the main person we look to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's kind of the way that we're playing, right? We're really, I think over the last few matches, playing with an emphasis to put him in positions to score. And my problem with him and why I put him as a faller is because, like you said, Drew, his finishing has kind of fallen off a cliff, right? Like I said with Trossard, I think he had 3 good opportunities. The one that keeps playing in my head is near the end of the match where the ball is kind of teed up for him right in front of Onana. Obviously, there's a couple players he has to shoot between. But it's a really tame shot that Onana is just able to get down to the ground and save pretty straightforwardly. And then I think the free kick was pretty annoying. Just once, I would like to see Declan Rice take it. But yeah, I think that's kind of the bone to pick with Odegaard. But in terms of his creativity, I think the first 20, 25 minutes of the match, he was great. He was doing a lot of little dinks over the defense. He was trying to do some 1-2s in front of the back line. He was driving at players. He was, I think he tried a couple back post crosses. He was really pulling the strings and trying to make things happen. But I just think, as the game state shifted and, as players maybe stopped giving him things to aim for throughout the match, I mean, at a certain point, like what can you really ask him to do, right? He's got a 17-year-old on the right flank next to him. He doesn't have Ben White. He's got an 8 lumbering around at false 9 in front of him. Yeah, I mean, it's just the environment's all messed up for him, and he's playing through injury, and it's been pretty tumultuous season for him. So at the end of the day, I think I've slightly adjusted how I view Odegaard, but it's not. I still think he's an excellent player. I just think he needs. I think what I've learned about him this season is that he needs a lot more help than we've given him, and maybe we are asking a little bit too much of him in terms of the role he plays in this team. But yeah, I think the way that people are really trying to seize this opportunity to say, see, I told you so. Odegaard's shit. He's not a good player. We should have signed Bruno. We should have signed Buendia or James Madison or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that is weird behavior. And yeah, I don't know. Just the facts bear out that Odegaard's still a good player. It's just that, like you said, when your best attackers go down, then that has an effect on the rest of the team, and that really does hold you back from hitting your potential. But John, I'll hand it off to you. Do you have anything to kind of add here? What's your take on people kind of trying to push this agenda that Odegaard no longer is a good player?
No, I mean that's nonsense. But I'm almost not going to dignify that. What I will say though is it's kind of like the Ozil conversations that we used to have, where you had this amazing creative player who maybe was a little languid, physically didn't look like he was what people wanted, especially in a time where like Kevin De Bruyne is doing what he was doing in the league in a similar position. And then you look at who's around him. You have, Alex Iwobi out on the left and Walcott on the right and Giroud up top. And yeah, sometimes you can make stuff happen. And he'd play well with players like Aaron Ramsey and things like that. But, it was almost like really nice rims on like a hoopty, crappy car, it was like if you put him on like an Escalade, it's going to look awesome, but it doesn't matter how nice your rims are. If you have a crappy car, it's going to look like a crappy car with nice rims. And that was like the Ozil problem. And that's not really the Odegaard problem, but this notion of getting him in the right space with the right players around him, kind of operating in the right way. I think Odegaard is kind of similar in that regard to Ozil. I think he's got a little bit more of the physicality there. I think that obviously there's some things that Ozil was absolutely world class and maybe in the contention for being the best in the modern Premier League history at doing that went very, very unappreciated a lot of times. But there were things that he did that were very frustrating. And I think one of those things that we used to say about Ozil was why can't he just pass in the back of the net? His passing is amazing. His through balls are amazing. Just pass it into the net, which is kind of easier said than done, I think. But it makes you wonder, like, Odegaard is this amazingly technical player. You'd imagine that he'd be able to do it a little bit better in front of goal. And I think a lot of it has to do with what Drew was saying about instruction. I think there may be an instruction with him. There has to be. Otherwise, if there's an instruction for him to shoot more or score more, he's not following it, which is a negative. So assuming that's not the case, assuming that it is an instruction, then maybe it's a system thing like Drew was saying. And then it needs to kind of change maybe to suit the overall kind of issues that we're having. But it's definitely, if it is not a system thing, then it's a mental thing, which is very possible as well. I think he's doing a lot and he's focusing on a lot, and the stuff that he does well, he can do very well. But the stuff that he doesn't do well historically has been putting the ball in the back of the net, minus a purple patch that he had one season here. Historically, that's not the kind of player he is. So, yeah, to all of a sudden say he's not a good player is kind of insane. I don't understand it. I'm not trying to like throw shade on people. Like I have insane football takes all the time. It's just part of the deal. Like some of them are going to be great, some of them are going to be batshit. But if you think that Odegaard is not a good footballer, that's a batshit insane take.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that point about Odegaard not being historically, a prolific goal scorer, I think that's something that we're probably going to act on in the summer because, and get ready for a banging segue here. They asked Arteta, kind of what's the next evolution for this team after the draw at United, and Arteta said efficiency. And you can assume that means efficiency in the boxes. So I think we are going to take that goal scoring burden off of Odegaard and hopefully kind of take him out of the firing line a little bit. But someone who likes to put players in the firing line is Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And I would like us to talk about that for a few minutes at least before we get out of here, as we're at the hour mark. So I just want to read this quote, and there's a full interview. Drew, you sent me the link to the full thing on Sky, and I'll pull that up in a second. But just this is the quote I want to start with. So Jim Ratcliffe did an interview with Gary Neville at Sky, and he said at one point, if you look at the players that we are buying this summer that we didn't buy, we're buying Antony, Casemiro, Onana, Højlund, Sancho. These are all things from the past. We've inherited those things and have to sort that out. And then he got asked by the interviewer, do you think that those players aren't good enough? Like, is that where you're getting at? And Ratcliffe kind of like hemmed and hawed for a few minutes and finally was like, well, some of them aren't good enough and some of them are overpaid. And I just think it's wild to me. And it's kind of, I feel like I've just watched the movie Rocky, where yes, we quote unquote lost, but we're winning in life compared to the guy we lost against, because United are a dumpster fire, man. You have the guy running your football operations out, naming players specifically and saying they're not good enough or they're overpaid or we shouldn't have signed them in the first place. And then this is of course after. I think Gary Neville also did an interview with him, and he got asked about laying off a bunch of people and not providing free lunches for staff anymore. And this billionaire said something to the effect of like, oh well, no one really gets, or like 95% of us don't get free lunches. And I think it's insane, and I really do think that the direction that Manchester United Football Club are heading in is extremely dire, and I, for one, look forward to seeing them crash and burn. But John, I'll go to you here. Now that I'm not sure how much of the quotes you were able to kind of catch up on ahead of the pod, but what do you make of those sound bites and just kind of what's happening at United generally? I'm sure you've seen some of the things that have been in the news recently.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really got into the specifics of what he had said, but I do know kind of a general sense of what was being said. I know that I was talking to my United friend about it, who can be a little delusional at times, and his position was, look, he kind of respects him for actually sitting down and taking the criticism. And his kind of position was that, the Glazers and Stan Kroenke would never. And my response was kind of like, what? Like air your dirty laundry in public? Yeah, I don't think the Glazers or Stan Kroenke would ever do that. No, I don't think that's a productive exercise. I think, maybe it kind of sheds light on things and puts pressure on people, but that's got to be the real right decision, right? If that's the only means to the end, then by all means go for it. But if you miscalculate that, that's a lot of bad blood being thrown out there. It's just a very dangerous game to play.
Also, you're going to have even more trouble selling these guys on, and you've just kind of painted them as these massive financial burdens. So now you want these guys sitting on your bench for the next, 3 to 5 years, just like taking in millions of pounds a week because you had to come out and say something like that about them.
Yeah, so one of the things I was going to point out was exactly that. Like, it's kind of a few things. The first one is you're going to have to deal with a lot of disharmony within the squad, among the staff. It doesn't paint a feel-good picture. And on a team that's already struggling for any kind of unity and cohesion, you're going to throw that into the mix. And I'm sure it's going to resonate with some of them who were like, yeah, I agree with every word he said. And there is a problem here, but then it's going to cause even more division, which is not something you need at a time where you're trying to get everyone on the same page. And the second one is exactly what you said. You're also affecting the bottom line of being able to move some of these players on by publicly shaming them and throwing them under the bus. So it's kind of a fascinating decision to go out and be, I guess respect for the candor, but at the same time, to what end? To what end? It needs to be calculated right, because it's like I said, dangerous game that he's playing.
Yeah, just lot of risk taken, and I'm not sure how much reward you can get from sound bites like that. But
let's think about it for a second. Yeah. Historically, I'm trying to think of a situation where you've had someone come out and throw everyone under the bus publicly like that, and it's worked out afterwards. Like I can't think of many times where that's been the case.
I feel like the one I could make, it's not even in the footballing sphere. It's like George Steinbrenner did this ages ago in like my childhood with the Yankees. And maybe that's where Ratcliffe's coming from. I don't know. But from like a footballing perspective, I cannot remember the last time a club owner or a part club owner has come out and absolutely thrown a mountain of water on a grease fire in this kind of manner. And I personally absolutely love it. And I had the joy of being on my work shift when those quotes dropped, and my face lit up when I saw them. I kind of chuckled. It's hysterical to me, because there's got to be so much humble pie at the moment, because I can think of, I can remember a lot of discourse around, the deal for Hoyland and the deal for Anthony, and the way United fans were kind of popping up saying, these are the next best things since sliced bread, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny that Anthony's gone on loan to Real Betis and he's become like this great player again. And I think that almost kind of shows you that the issue was probably the club. Because, Sancho's not been back at his best at Chelsea, but he was definitely better at Chelsea than he was at for Man United. Anthony's left, he's been, more improved. But at the same time, like the reason why I want to bring this up on the podcast is because it also shows exactly what Arsenal are trying to avoid becoming. And a lot of different talking heads in the Arsenal space have mentioned the fact that the club are so pointed in terms of how they spend, who they spend it on, and to what level they're prepared to spend on players. And they want to get as close to a sure thing as possible, because when you just throw money at a problem habitually year on year for however many years, this is the result. And that's kind of what a lot of fans are hoping is what happens with Chelsea as well. Whether for that does or not, that remains to be seen. But all these wounds with United are entirely self-inflicted, and you can question if it was the fault of the Glazers before that or not. Which obviously probably was. But this goes back to it's not just about getting the right players. It's about getting the right manager to lead them and the backroom staff to work with the manager to build the club out. And that's what makes me so angry when Arsenal fans keep talking about, we're in phase 26 or whatever, and we've yet to win a trophy. I guarantee you every single United fan would rather be where we are currently than where they are right now. And that kind of speaks to what stability gets you in the current footballing space. And we're in a measurably better position to actually go on and win something in the foreseeable future than United are, who potentially looking at gutting that entire senior squad and starting from scratch and having a larger rebuild than we've had to do under a manager who currently is worse off than Arteta was when he first came in, and Arteta had a larger job to do with zero management experience, and look at where it's gotten them. So yeah, but going back to what John said, I don't remember a time when owners come in and just basically just kind of like lifted the veil in this kind of way. But at the same time, I don't think any of us can kind of really be surprised, because I think the writing's on the wall for quite some time. I'm just a little bit taken back that he decided to do it now. Like you said, the timing of it couldn't be worse if you're a United fan, but for the rest of us, I think it's beautiful. So.
You know how that interview sounded to me when I was reading some of those sound bites? Jadon Sancho, biggest waste of money I've ever seen in my life.
That's entirely relevant right now.
Biggest waste of money. Anthony, more like Anthony Banderas, acted like a good player. Really fooled everybody. Sleepy Joe Glazer. He made these deals such bad deals. Such terrible. I would have done such beautiful deals. Such beautiful deals like you've never seen before. That's how that read to me.
Well, all right. I don't think we can go up from there.
Yeah, I think we just cut the pod right here and just press end, and then we just leave it there.
Man. But yeah, I look at the end of the day, right? I you know what? I am actually kind of glad that interview came out when it did, because yes, Sunday is a massive bummer, and it really puts the magnifying glass on the things that we need to solve in the summer. But like you guys said, it also kind of, this moment right now with Jim Ratcliffe doing what he's doing really underlines the fact that we are in such a better situation moving forward, where United don't know what they're doing. They're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. They're sending out the guy who basically runs the football operations to name and shame players. They're going to try to build apparently a 100-seater stadium, and hopefully bring in some extra revenue, and maybe that'll give them a buffer when they inevitably make more mistakes. They're treating their staff like terribly. They're cutting free lunches. You've got a billionaire out here like whining about paying his employees to have lunch. It's a mess over there. And then Chelsea, I think, are just going to turn into a little plaything for what's the one we're looking for here? Just like investment firms. I forget the exact word for it, but like they're just going to turn into like an investment where Chelsea are going to buy young players on the cheap, and they're going to sell them for a profit, and how they do in the league is going to be secondary to that. And I am really grateful, and I think we are really lucky that we are not in that position where we are trying to win things, but we are trying to do it self-sustainably and intelligently. And at times it's going to be frustrating, but I think in the long run it'll work out. So, yeah, I mean, if you guys don't have anything else, we can leave it there. Nothing else?
No, no. I just kind of feel like I think we kind of hit the points kind of that are relevant in terms of how this relates to us moving forward, particularly with with the new sporting director coming in the summer, and how we take it from there. And it just kind of shows that you have to do things the right way if you want to have longevity in terms of whatever you're trying to achieve. Flash in the pan clubs happen all the time, but there are so many fans, I feel like, on social media that the way every summer it's the same thing, right? You get those whole hypothetical, well, if I had 400 million, I would sell these players for this, and I'd spend on these players, and you have an entirely new 11. But what United are dealing with right now is it shows you if there's no actual direction rooted in not just financial sustainability, but again, fit for the manager, fit for the club, fit for the club culture as well. And I think Ratcliffe didn't mention it. I don't think we've mentioned it, but you can kind of almost question a lot of the players that United have bought. Those, and I give Gary Neville about 0.1% credit for most things in life when it comes to his punditry. But what I will say is that he usually is pretty accurate in terms of, when he will reference a lot of these players not being United players. I do think United does have a legacy that they'd have to uphold in terms of the kind of players they bring in, and a lot of Arsenal fans is the same thing about a lot of the players that we want to see. Can they last under Arteta? Do they come in understanding what the club is about? And I do think that actually is important, and you see that at big clubs too, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whoever it is. So no, I just kind of feel like I said before, this is kind of a moment where I feel like if Arsenal fans can look at it and say, you know what, this isn't the season we wanted, but it could be 1,000 times worse. And maybe we don't have it so bad, and I think that's actually really important right now.
Yeah, for sure. John, did you want to add anything there?
No, Drew, as always, eloquent as always.
Casemiro, more like Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. Getting the hell out of my
Jesus.
club. Get him out.
Oh man.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and put a bow on this. So that was Drew and John. You can follow Drew on Twitter at GeeChyKid, and you can follow him on Blue Sky at SplindMandry.bsky.social. You can follow John at 305cast on Twitter and at Yellow Ribbons on .bsky.social on Blue Sky. And I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Shamsdale.bsky.social. The pod, you can follow the pod at NotThatGooner on Twitter and at NotThatGooner.bsky.social on Blue Sky. You can follow us at Not That Kind of Gooner on Instagram, also Not That Kind of Gooner on YouTube. Please do subscribe and give us 5 stars and a review on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you get your podcasts and all that good stuff. And yeah, just thank you for being here with us. Thank you for listening to my nonsense and listening to the very intelligent things that Drew and John have to say. And yeah, we'll be back with you hopefully on Thursday. We should probably get in someone at some point to talk about the Andrea Berta thing. We'll talk about that offline, but we'll talk about that. We'll probably talk about the PSV match, preview Chelsea, and any other nonsense that happens this week. So until then, take care, and we will talk to you soon. And bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner. All right, I'm a Gooner. Oh, I love you.
Santi Cazorla!
Kyle